Welcome back to our special coverage. Important clarifications coming in there from the Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant. Joining us now, industry reacting to what Mr. Kant said. Joining me now is Mr. R.C. Bhargava, Chairman of Maruti Suzuki, and Shekar Viswanathan, Vice Chairman at Toyota Kirloskar Motor. Shekar, let me start by asking you, Amitabh Kant is now basically speaking industry's language, saying the government now will adopt a technology agnostic approach, and it is not the government's business to dictate to industry what technology they should adopt. This should be music to your ears, Shekar.
Well, I think the
Go ahead, Shekar.
Sorry, no, I can't hear you. Okay.
Shekar,
can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah,
yes,
go ahead,
I can
please,
hear
please.
you. All right. No, I mean, I think, yes, it is. It's good to hear the government say this. At the same time, I think the government has also to listen. And I think what we are seeing now is that the government is certainly listening, and they've been listening over the last several months now. The important point is that we need this kind of policy decision can't be made overnight. There has to be discussion, debate, and that too in evolving technology, whether it's electric or hybrids or hydrogen or any other alternate fuels. Technology is growing by leaps and bounds. So I think what the government has done is they've assimilated everything, and they have come to this conclusion.
Do you think perhaps there's also now need for SIAM to relook into their, their own sort of internal targets of 20, 30, 40% electrification of all personal cars, which I understand, Toyota, you were not in favor of that per se. Is there need now for SIAM also to relook into themselves? Because many wonder this was under pressure from the government that they adopted a position like this. Shekar, can you hear me?
I couldn't hear the last. No, I can't hear the last part.
All right,
of what
Shekar,
you said.
we'll just ask one of our technicians to try and get the line up and running. But let's just also get in a quick word from Mr. R.C. Bhargava. He also joins in now. Mr. Bhargava, now the government has clarified clearly that they would not be coming out with a clear electric vehicle policy, but would look at specific action plans by respective ministries. Does this change life as far as Maruti Suzuki is concerned?
Ranjay, the electrification target and the intention to go electric has been stated by the government. The task of converting the conventional vehicles into electric cars in the future is basically that of the industry. It's not something which government will do. And industry has to tell government what in its view are the difficulties which will come up and what are the actions which government needs to take so that the movement from the conventional IC vehicles to the electric vehicles can take place smoothly. And then government has to consider those and take actions to see that the road becomes appropriate for the industry to reach the target of electrification. So policy, to my mind, was not really very relevant, because what would policy say at this stage before industry has put down what its requirements would be? And industry would only be able to say that when they actually start the task of electrification and find out what the problems are in that business.
So you're talking about industry, speaking to the government. So which are the areas then, Mr. Bhargava, that you would want government support to make electric cars more viable?
See, electric cars, the major problems, as I think everybody knows, is one is going to be affordability of the cars, and especially for the small cars in India, because at the small car level, at the price at which small cars sell, the customer's ability to buy cars which are very much more expensive than what they are today is very limited. And I think that's one area where government intervention would be required to see that when we move down from the more expensive cars to the less expensive cars, how electric small cars can become affordable at least to some extent, to the people. The second is the infrastructure, because electricity is a fuel for these for all electric cars. How does a customer who does not have the means of filling the fuel in his electric car at home is going to be enabled to keep getting his car refueled periodically in some parts of the city where he can conveniently reach and charge his car every second day or whenever he requires to charge it. So the infrastructure support is very much going to be required.
All right, Shekar, now I hope you can hear me now. Now that the government has clarified that they will be adopting a technology agnostic approach, do you feel that there is also a need now for them to recalibrate their tax policy, especially with respect to GST, where electric vehicles come in at 12%, but there's been a bone of contention on your part, hybrids continue to be taxed at 28%. So you feel now there needs to be calibration even on the taxation front?
Absolutely, there needs to be calibration on or recalibration on the taxation front. Incidentally, hybrids today are being taxed at 43%, the 28% plus a 15% cess. I think to begin with, I think they must recognize that hybrids do contribute to a lowering of the oil import bill, which is a very important objective from the Government of India's standpoint. Now, we're not saying that one hybrid car is going to make a big difference to the oil import bill, but it's not only Toyota which has hybrids in its portfolio. There are other companies also which will have hybrids in its portfolio, and they would then be encouraged to come here and sell hybrids. Obviously, we will also want to sell a certain amount of electric vehicles.
Would you then press upon maybe your industry peers within SIAM who came in with this 2030 deadline of 40% personal cars to move to electric, which one would imagine happened also because of the pressure from the government? Would you want SIAM also to reconsider their own self-imposed deadline of 2030?
Well, I think what SIAM has done is taken a weighted average of opinions on this particular issue. And 2030 was just a convenient date that they came up with. But certainly, I'm sure they would look at it after taking opinions of all the auto players. Our own opinion is, rather than set a deadline, we should need to have timelines with calibrated, with a calibrated approach. Okay. Let's say, for example, 2025, this will be the amount of electrification, 2030, etc. The other important point is, globally, electrified vehicles means electric vehicles and hybrids.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't make a distinction. Sorry, Shekar, to cut you short, but we just need to get in a quick word also from Mr. Bhargava before we wrap this up. Because, Mr. Bhargava, you were talking about incentives, and government may say that they're already giving incentives to electric cars since they attract a lower rate of GST of 12%. The same question that I asked Shekar. So are you seeking for more subsidies or incentives from the government?
It's not a comparison with the cars that are charged at 28% or 43%. It's a question of affordability. At 12% tax, would small electric cars be affordable and bought by the customer? Neither me nor the government can actually determine. It is something which the customer himself is going to determine. And once these small cars come and their costs are known, only at that stage will we have to see whether GST at 12% will enable this to happen or not to happen. Many countries today are subsidizing electric cars. I don't think in India we have the capacity to subsidize cars in any manner. I don't think politically subsidization of cars will be possible. But a lower GST may still be possible to make this happen.
So therefore, you're saying 12% GST is not enough. GST Council should look at lowering the GST rates on electric small cars even further to make them attractive. Is that right, sir?
For small cars, at least.
All right, Mr. Bhargava, Shekar, Viswanathan, thank you very much for joining us on this special broadcast. Important clarifications there coming from the government. Niti Aayog CEO making it very clear that it's not just going to be an all-electric approach. Government will now adopt a technology-agnostic approach, precisely what the auto industry has been saying for all this while. Thank you very much for watching this special broadcast here on CNBC TV 18. From all of us here, goodbye.